Every devil gotta flee. You don't have no reason. I'm bold as a lion, I don't fear no evil. Blood of Jesus on me. I'm covered, I'm lethal. Yeah, came out to find out I walk with authority. Devil been lying, but the truth is restoring me. Yeah. I got the word and it's cutting like sword to me. Step in the spirit, ain't nothing controlling me.
Hey fam, and welcome back to Sacred Singleness. Okay, let's talk about the one people either avoid completely or only talk about on the surface. And if you came from episode 1, you already know that at the end I mentioned that the next deadly sin I was going to be talking about was lust. And before we even start, I just want to say one thing. Lust is a lot deeper than sex. Like way, 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 way deeper. Because if we reduce lust to just physical desire, we tend to miss the real issue. Okay? Because lust is hunger. It's craving. It's wanting something so badly that your desires start to lead instead of God. And if we're being completely honest between you and I, a lot of people are being ruled by cravings they keep calling love. Yeah? And so I'm going to reference back to, you guys remember season 5, Galatians, right? So, and while I have to say, and while lust isn't listed as a fruit, obviously, it's often the thing fighting against it, right? Because the fruit requires discipline and lust wants instant gratification. The fruit says grow and the lust, it says now. Do you see the reference there? So let's go ahead and define this right because I don't want nobody confused, okay? A lot of people, like I said, believe that lust is just sexual. And for the majority of the times, yes, it is. But it can look like a lot of different things. It can look like being, emotionally obsessed. It can look like needing validation, chasing that attention, wanting people more than peace, addiction to temporary pleasures. And when people, what are temporary pleasures? That could be food too, sexual toys, pornography, little sex parties and things like that are out in the world, craving what looks good but destroys you later. You ever been there? I know a couple of you have been. When you're with someone and you know you shouldn't be sleeping with them and you know that you shouldn't be doing that, but in the moment, you can't pass it. It's just the feeling, things are tingling, things are, pressure's increasing, things go up, things get perky and all the and yeah, the feeling's great. Then what? You're left with this feeling of emptiness, of conviction, of maybe, not feeling well after it's all done because you knew it was wrong. You're walking with God. And now you have that conviction, right? And now you share bodily fluids, right? And now you have this tie, a soul tie with this person. And now it's a little bit more difficult if y'all break up to kind of detach from that. Like it just spirals into like all this stuff, and then it can create depression and anger and just tears and just destruction, right? Lust is basically wanting something so badly you stop asking whether it's good for you. Okay? And if we're being completely real, sometimes we don't miss the person, right? We don't miss the person, okay? We miss the attention. We miss the chemistry that you might have felt with that person, the feeling of being wanted, the emotional high. And that's why you keep seeing this cycle, right? This repeated cycle of people going back to familiarity, right? Back and back. Not because it's love, but because it feeds something. And that's what happens when people are lustful. It's feeding that lust, you know? That's why it's very important to get on your word. That's why it's very important to get closer to God. That's very important to have community, to be surrounded by things that does not feed that lust, right? Like if you have an addiction to alcohol, stay away from places that sell alcohol or that place that are going to have alcohol. You know, if you have an addiction to pornography, you know, maybe don't go online and look up those things. Do not go to strip clubs. Do not engage with things online that can possibly reel you back in. You know, if you know you're going to end up caving in and sleeping with someone, don't put yourself in positions that is going to allow you to end up sleeping. Like Netflix and chill, and you're not going to be chilling. You're going to be Netflix and you know what I'm saying? I don't want to say it because I can say it, but I don't want to say it. You're going to end up in them sheets, you know? So, Bible study, my butt. Take your Bible study, not at home. People are like, well, we're just going to be in his house, in the living room or on the dining room. Baby, it don't take nothing but 3 steps to get to the bedroom. And quite frankly, if you grown and you've been there, it ain't going to take nothing but 3 seconds to get to the couch. And matter of fact, you don't even have to make it all the way to the couch. You can just bend right on over in the dining room chair. So let's stop acting and pretending like we're angels and we don't know nothing. No. Go out in a public place where you're not going to be able to do any of that. And when you're done, each of you go separate ways. You home and him home. So what I'm trying to say is do not put yourself in places and situations you know you're weak enough to cave in. Okay? And I had to learn this the hard way. You know, because sometimes what feels intense is not really intimacy, it's an attachment. It's emotional dependency on that person. It's loneliness wearing makeup. It's, you know, and because it feels strong at the moment, we call it deep, right? But it's not everything intense. You know, everything that's intense is healthy, you know? So, just keep that in mind. But yeah, I had to learn. Took me a minute, but I learned. And if we reference back, let's reel it back to the Bible, okay? To Matthew's chapter 5 verse 28, Jesus says, "Anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And you know when sometimes people read that, they focus only on attraction. But Jesus was actually talking about the heart, right? Because sin starts inwardly before it becomes out, right? Before it ever becomes an outward thing. So, just to give you some substance, some examples, more of what lust is, okay? It can look anywhere or anything like entertaining conversations, you know, are pulling you backwards. Yeah? Staying attached to an individual, right? That's unavailable. Trying to confuse the chemistry that you think you're having for a calling. That happens to a lot of Christian people, maybe. You know? Or what about this one? Not that I'm thinking about it, but chasing people who trigger your wounds. Y'all run. Because one thing is for an individual, a loved one, a spouse, a partner, to bring out your patterns and things like that in a very healthy and loving way, or exposing your wounds or the things that hurt you, versus someone who is triggering your wounds purposefully. Or they might not even know that they're, triggering it, but you keep going back. That is not also lust, but that is an addiction, and a bad one at that. Or what about like choosing temporary comfort over long-term peace? You're over here being in these insignificant relationships just to get, the lust fed. But in the long-term run, it's not a peaceful place to be. It's toxic. It brings nothing but confusion. And the dangerous part about this whole thing is that it feels so good at first. Like, you can't tell me it doesn't feel good. And that's the reason a lot of people stay. They keep recycling the pattern over and over and over because it feels good at first. Then it feels bad. Then you wait a little bit. Then you're like, oh, and then you go back to it. Then it starts feeling good again. It's just like men who just date and keep dating and keep dating and keep dating. But they're not just dating people. They're dating and sleeping with them because they have a sexual addiction. Right? It's women who sit there and say, oh, I'm going to dress sexy, but they're really revealing, boobs hanging out completely. I mean, there's nothing wrong with showing a little something, but it's the decency in the dress code, right? They're nipples almost showing. All that's covering is the nipples. You're at the beach wearing a thong. And you're not doing it for you, right? You're doing it to get the attention of people. A lot of women, that have really, really nice bodies, and this is not shaming nobody or talking about nothing, If you have a beautiful body, kudos to you. But there's always a place and time. And a lot of women, some of them, they wear it because they want to wear it for themselves, right? But a lot of them like the attention that they get from it. And that can also be a form of lust. That's all I'm trying to get at, okay? I don't want to divert because I don't want nobody here thinking that I'm bashing females or anything, because I'm not, okay? I'm a female myself, and I had my day and age where, I used to dress very provocative. I don't do that anymore. But as you grow in Christ, you'll start realizing why you don't dress provocative, right? There's nothing wrong with being sexy and stuff for your husband, right? And you can be sexy and modest at the same time. Once you learn how to be sexy and modest, there's something about it. Like, you can't go back to the minimal clothing, if that makes any sense. Okay? And let's talk about how lust lives in our singleness. Okay? Because loneliness makes lust a lot louder, like 100 times louder. Because, when you feel unseen, when you feel touch starved, right? Like, nobody's touched me, nobody's giving me a hug, when you feel emotionally tired, anything that offers temporary comfort starts looking like love. Especially when you're not healed, especially when you don't know you, right? Especially when you need validation from people. That's why it's very important for you guys to heal, to take time to learn yourself, to want better for yourself, not to take crumbs, and not to allow people to use your body and your light, your kindness, and utilize it to their advantage. We should not be sitting here allowing the fact that we feel lonely because we don't have anybody. So let me go and sleep around with somebody just so I can feel wanted or needed. Like, stop doing that to yourself. That's a temporary comfort. You know? Because when you do that, if you think about it, when you do that, when you start looking for temporary comfort, your standards start to go down, right? You start to negotiate your standards. Your boundaries start moving, right? And you're like, well, maybe this isn't that bad. No, sis. No, brother. Whoever's listening on the other side, it is. You're just lonely. And what you need to learn to do when you have moments that trigger you to want to do those things is find yourself a hobby. Find yourself some friends. Find yourself something to occupy your time. Read the Bible. You know, one day I was feeling like, oh my God, you know, I told y'all I threw away all my toys. I've been toyless for I don't know how long. I don't even miss them, to be completely honest. And it was during that time of the month where I was ovulating, and baby, if you're a woman, you know. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta get this feeling off of me. Let me tell you how that feeling of went away. Okay? Let me tell you how the feeling of being horny went away. I opened that Bible up so quick and started reading the word of God that it turned me off. It turned me off completely. I didn't want to know more. I'm just going to be completely transparent with you guys. Fight your battles, your lust, whatever it is that you, with the Bible. Just open it. The Bible going to make you not want to do nothing. It's a buzz killer. You know, God, you be stepping in. And he listening to me, so he know it be killing your buzz. And that's exactly what you want. You don't want to, and you know, there's nothing wrong with thinking about something. It's when you act on it, right? Right? It's when you know, oh God, I want to have sex so bad, you know. Ooh, I want to have it so bad. You can think of it, right? But it's when you act on it that it becomes the problem. You know? And the problem with feeding your lust, is that it gets stronger. If you keep feeding unhealthy desires, do not be surprised when discipline feels weak. You cannot keep watering the chaos and be praying on the sidelines for peace. I hope that made sense to you guys. In the book of Corinthians, the first book of, First Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 18, it says, flee from sexual immorality. And I want you guys to notice that it doesn't say stand there and negotiate it. It says flee. And if you don't know what flee is, it means run, sister, run, brother, run, like whatever your biggest fear is after you. Take off 160 miles an hour. Because some things are not meant to be managed. They're meant to be left. And honestly, most lust, right, is rooted in something a lot deeper. Think about it. Sometimes people are lustful in certain ways because of insecurities, rejection, abandonment, loneliness, the need to feel chosen. And instead of us sitting there and trying to heal it, we try to soothe it with people. And people don't heal us. That's not other people's job to heal us. Everybody's wanting something. A lustful person from another lustful person is wanting something. You know? What I like about my podcast is that everything that I talk about ties with one of the seasons that I already spoke about. I don't have a specific order in my podcast where I speak about certain things like, oh, today I'm going to talk about becoming and tomorrow I'm going to talk about, no, as I go, like I don't know what I'm going to be talking about in season 7, and look at me, I'm already thinking ahead of season 7, but what I'm saying is once I get towards the end, whatever's been put in my spirit to talk about is what I'm going to talk about. But what I love about it is that it all kind of intertwines. Everything that I'm speaking about in season, 6 intertwines with some of the season 7. It intertwines with, season, not 7, 5. And it intertwines with season 4. And then it goes into season 3, which is, my personal life. And then it goes right back to season 2 and then to 1. And it all intertwines in a way. And the only thing that keeps coming back is healing. We have to heal. You can know all the deadly sins. You can know all the fruits of the Spirit. You can have the best intentions. You can be the best person, that doesn't wish nobody anything malignant or malicious or don't have any bad intentions. But if you're not healed, if you're not internally healed, all of these things are going to surface in your life. All of it. And it's going to be so hard to combat and battle. You need to have God, and you need to get closer to Him, and you need to love yourself, and you need to heal those wounds. Don't let the past traumas dictate your future, guys. Everybody has a right to change. Just because you were a bully at school don't mean you got to be a bully in your future. Your past don't define your future. Okay? It doesn't. So, come on. Like, the things that I talk about, I've experienced it. Some of the stuff, I'm still learning it. We're all learning and growing together. But as long as we're learning and growing, the word growing and moving forward and getting closer to God, that's all that matters. But we need to heal. We need to heal. You need to heal. Okay? In order for the good things to come into your life, in order for you to see a different perspective, see things from a different perspective, okay? And stop utilizing other people to fill in that void that you're trying to fill. Nobody's going to be able to, nobody's ever, I'm telling you this from experience, nobody's ever going to fill that void but you and God. You cannot expect people to be your happy place. You have to love yourself and be happy with yourself and content in who you are. You cannot put that burden on another human being, because we know what's going to happen when you put somebody else on a pedestal. You're going to be disappointed, because people are human and we're not perfect, and we're always going to eventually disappoint someone one way or the other. So if your whole life is based on somebody else disappointing you, you need to go back to season 1. That's all I'm going to tell you. A person cannot heal what only God can reach. Let me repeat that again. A person cannot heal what only God can reach. Freedom, right? This freedom that we have is not pretending that temptation doesn't exist. Because temptation is everywhere you turn around, especially when you're trying to grow with God. When you're trying to get closer to God, that's when temptation hits your door. That's when temptation is knocking and knocking and knocking and following you like a shadow, because it's waiting for you to trip and fall into the lie, fall into the temptation, fall into the lustful acts, right? Freedom is learning not to let it lead you. Is you being able to say, yes, I want that, but wanting it doesn't mean I need it. Okay? And I don't know about y'all, but that's maturity. That's self-control. Right back to the last episode of the fruit of the Spirit, right? Self-control. And that's growth. You saw how I just tied that back into my okay. That's what I say. My podcast it all ties together, right? And sometimes the reason something feels so strong, guys, is because it was never supposed to stay. You know, some people are assignments, you know, not destinations. And I want you guys to really sit with this, okay? About to hit you with a reflection question. Um, Ask yourself, okay, whenever you get a chance, ask yourself, what am I craving that keeps pulling me out of alignment? What am I craving that keeps pulling me out of alignment? Who do I keep turning to that God already told me to release? This was a very important one. Because that's the one that I was saying when people keep going back and back and back in a cycle. Who do I keep returning to that God already told me to release? Especially, I'm talking about people who are toxic and are not trying to lead you in the right way. And another thing I want you to ask yourself, because a lot of us confuse lust with love, emotion with love, chemistry with love. No, ask yourself, am I calling it love when it's really just lust, loneliness, or emotional dependency? Again, am I calling it love when it's really just lust, loneliness, or emotional dependency? Okay? Sit with those questions. Ask yourself those questions. I give you guys these questions, you know, so you guys can learn more about yourself, so you guys can be in deep thought, so you guys can reflect. Because I think when questions are being asked and you have to sit there with those questions and answer them and really dig deep, not only are you learning, but you're learning something about yourself that maybe you just didn't think about, you know? So, let's go ahead and close with prayer, guys. God, be honest with me. I need you to be honest with me or with us. Show us where desire has become dangerous. Show us where we've been chasing feelings instead of peace. Help us break unhealthy attachments. Teach us discipline. Teach us discernment. And help us stop settling for the things that feel good but pull us away from you. We want freedom, God. Real freedom. In the name of Jesus, we all pray. Amen. And all right, fam, that is it for this episode. Maybe I should have talked a little bit more about the other types of lust. I think I said I was going to do that in the previous episode, but quite frankly, guys, I really feel like 80% of the lust is sexual immorality. Okay, the other 10% or the other 20% or whatever percentage I gave you, I really feel like, you know, yes, that's important too, but what a lot of humans at this moment is struggling with, especially men, it's lust. Okay? But on the next episode, okay, I'm going to be talking about wrath, okay? And listen, let me tell you, anger is deeper than yelling. Way, way deeper. Okay? So I will see you guys on the next episode. I hope you guys have a beautiful day, evening, wherever you are in the world. Until next time, bye, guys.